boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, very recently, super featherweight prospect Alicia Baumgardner took Twitter and said, "Mayor people on bullshit. LOL. Just say the risk is too big." And I guess we can interpret this as trouble in paradise for the proposed Mayor versus Baumgardner grudge match. We know that things fell apart between Michaela Mayer and Maiva Hamadouche for whatever reason. He said, she said, all that jazz.
And Alicia was contacted about a fight.
But the news has inexplicably slowed since then.
Do you feel that maybe they're having second thoughts? Because I saw that there was an exchange yesterday between you and her.
I think absolutely they're having second thoughts because they didn't want to choose me. They didn't want to. What other options do they have? And now that I was offered the fight and then I put it on social media to say, hey, this is what's going on behind closed doors. Now it's like, oh, damn, now she's saying something? Yeah, I'm saying something because I ain't that from you. So now they're like, damn, like, what are we going to do? They're thinking about it. They have to think about it. All that barking she was been doing, all that talking about, you know, she riding the division. Kayla ain't nothing, bro. Like, and I want to expose that.
Do you think you can stop Michaela Mayer?
Absolutely.
Jeez. Woo!
I want to say that Michaela Mayer's social media presence has slowed as of late. I want to say that Michaela Mayer hasn't been as active or as vocal by way of her social media accounts as she normally is. I want to say that the news in reference to this fight and any other fight involving Michaela has slowed.
It has.
Doesn't look like she's going to be fighting Alicia Baumgardner in the near future.
For whatever reason.
Things aren't looking encouraging for the reigning WBO super featherweight champion, Michaela Mayer. They're really not. I mean, we know what Terry Harper's doing. Terry Harper's got that Hyun Mi Choi unification match coming up, you know, which could very well be announced by the time that this video is uploaded. That's what she's got going on. Alicia Baumgardner herself just inked a pact with Tom Ford Models. Her endeavors are not exclusive, limited to what she's got going on in the sport of boxing.
But what's Michaela doing?
What's she got going on? That's the question. Did the Michaela Mayer people notice Alicia Baumgardner's enthusiasm towards the match, her willingness to have it, and was that off-putting to them? Did that make the Michaela Mayer people apprehensive, even though they're the ones who offered Alicia Baumgardner this opportunity? They're the ones who offered her this fight.
Let's not kid ourselves.
There's a very obvious hierarchy of thought in play when you walk away from a Maiva Hamadouche unification match and offer a fight to Alicia Baumgardner, who, while she is a quality operator, one of the best at this weight,
she is.
She's been away from the sport for 12 months, and she's coming off of knee surgery. The Mayer people know that.
They were being opportunistic.
So it looks from where I'm sitting. But news has slowed in reference to that fight, and one can interpret that as apprehensiveness from the Mayer people. I mean, if they offered Alicia this fight weeks ago, and Alicia has already agreed to it, she wants the fight, there shouldn't be much getting in the way of it unless the Mayer people are having second thoughts. Maybe they don't like Alicia Baumgardner's enthusiasm. Maybe they view it as being more trouble than it's worth, more risky than they originally anticipated, and you know, maybe they want to move on to someone else.
That's one way to look at it.
Someone who isn't as risky, and I categorize it as such because it was the Mayer people that reached out to Alicia. It wasn't Alicia that reached out to them. They reached out to her. So if she's in accordance with what they want to do, what's the holdup? What's the problem? Are the Mayer people doubling back? Well, it looks that way. And given the state of the super featherweight division,
it's slim pickings.
There are other fighters out there, but they're just as risky, if not more risky, than Alicia is. I mean, what are we really talking about? A Delphine Pursoon fight? A Tiara Brown fight? You look at the current BoxRec ranked standings for the women's super featherweight division. Delphine Pursoon is ranked as the #1 super featherweight in the world. I don't know about her availability because Delphine Pursoon is in the process of attempting to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. We know Terry's busy and things fizzled out with Maiva Hamadouche. Fatuma Zerika is a possibility.
Yeah.
Eva Wallström's retired, and
she's doing the mommy thing now.
She's already been there and done that with Eva Brutnicka.
She has.
Brazil's own Vivian Obanoff has since retired from the sport of boxing and is facing jail time for having killed her husband with a blunt force object. But that's another story. Michaela's already fought Helen Joseph. Hélène Mechaled, unbeaten Hélène Mechaled of France, is a possibility, though I doubt that Elem Mechaled would take on a Mikaela Mayer fight, having been removed from the sport for at least a year. Elem Mechaled has also been inactive the last 12 months. Yumi Choi is spoken for. Katharina Sanders is another possibility, but when last I checked, Katharina was talking about moving up to 135 pounds. She's talking about moving up to lightweight. These things in mind, you know, if Mikaela and Alicia aren't going to fight, and Mikaela and her people are currently looking at other options, other opponents, these would have to be opponents outside of the top 15 ranked standings.
Or worse, she might bring up a girl from the featherweight division.
Bring up some fighter that normally campaigns at 126 pounds or lower to 130.
I mean, there's got to be a reason there's no progress with this Baumgardner fight.
Maybe the reason for that is because now they've doubled back and they're looking at the outliers, the girls ranked in the lower tier of the super featherweight division's ranked standings. Victor Pitou, Bomi Renshi, Naed Narchi. Maybe these are the girls they'd rather put Mikaela in there with because, putting her there with Alicia, they'd be running certain risks doing that. And perhaps from where they're sitting, in spite of having offered Alicia the fight, the look of it now is that it's more trouble than it's worth. In other news, Adrian Broner took to Instagram and left this screenshot, which reads, "I told Al and Espinoza to keep me busy, not dizzy. I want to fight and train and keep my body right, but if they ain't talking about me fighting, then I ain't about to be in the gym taking my body through hell for nothing. They about to make me fight on ESPN, a Triller or something, because I'm not in contract with anybody. I'm a loyal motherfucker. What y'all don't want me active and make 100, 200 million? Let's go. I want to fight, bruh. Keep playing. I'm gonna go punch a dude on the streets. I'm tired of this shit."
Not the first time Adrian Broner took to social media to complain.
He's not the first PBC fighter to take to social media to complain about not having a fight day.
Not that long ago, Daniel Roman was doing that.
You know what they say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
Adrian Broner was in action not that long ago, in February, against Santiago in a rather dubious decision that was awarded to Adrian. And then he wants another fight. He wants another fight date. He wants another opportunity to get out there, show his shit, whatever that shit is.
Can't fault him for that.
The biggest hang-up that many of us have with PBC fighters is that these guys don't fight often enough, whereas that seems to be the issue for Adrian. He wants to fight more often, and he's being vocal about it. So I won't castigate him for bringing those concerns to the public, for openly stating that, he wants another fight date, or he's going to look for opportunities elsewhere. Whether or not he's going to have to is another story entirely.
He might have to look for opportunities elsewhere.
Because I don't know what the PBC can do for him between either 140 or 147 pounds. At 140, you can fucking forget about Adrian Broner fighting for a title when all the major titles at 140 pounds are on the top-ranked side of things. They're held between Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez, who are supposed to be fighting very soon, in very near future. There's not a lot that the PBC can offer Adrian Broner at 140 pounds. Not that he can still make 140 pounds, because, well, I don't think he can. He didn't in his last fight, right?
Right.
At 147, there are more viable options for Adrian, but they are not options that he can go straight into the immediate future, An Adrian Broner versus Keith Thurman fight almost immediately comes to mind. The issue is that Keith Thurman is coming up on 2 years of inactivity, and he is looking at either Devon Alexander or Andre Berto for his comeback fight, not Adrian Broner.
Maybe they could make a Broner fight after that.
But I don't think that Keith Thurman would take on Adrian Bronier straight away. Errol Spence Jr.'s name has been tacked on to Yordenis Ugas July-ish in what could be a unification match between them, and Errol Spence Jr. is viewed as the biggest fight for any PBC welterweight, any PBC fighter campaigning at 147 pounds. That being said, I don't think Adrian Bronier has access to either Ugas or Spence. I would bring up Danny Garcia. That was a fight that was talked about some years ago, but Danny very recently said he's going up to junior middleweight.
Unless Adrian plans to fight him above 147, I don't see it happening.
An interesting tidbit about Adrian Bronier's latest outburst is he's saying he's not under contract with anybody, that he's a loyal guy, but he's not actually under contract with anyone, and he might have to look elsewhere for opportunities. I think he's onto something, though ultimately, I don't think he's going to follow up on that, because on the top-ranked ESPN side of things, there are opportunities, but they're opportunities that Adrian Bronier would have to work for. they're not just going to give him money for the sake of giving him money. If they're going to give him money, it's going to be to fight a live one.
It is.
They're going to make him earn his money. I don't know that Adrian Broner really wants to do that when he's complaining about staying in shape, staying in the gym between fights. You're supposed to do that.
Boy, if you don't get...
Sounds a lot like what Adrian is saying, is that unless he gets a fight date in the very near future, he's going to let himself go back to ballooning in weight between fights. And that comes as a detriment only to Adrian and what's left of Adrian's career, which, you'll excuse me for saying so, I don't think it's very much.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more left.
I think that the overhead of Adrian Broner's lifestyle, his financial woes, are likely a big part of the reason that only a few weeks after he last fought, he's applying pressure on Stefan Espinoza and Al Haymon to give him another fight date, get him another fight.
That's what I think this is all about.
So what fights they can get Adrian Broner, given the current state of 140 and 147 pounds, well, they ain't going to be high-profile fights. They're going to be more fights like that Santiago fight. Those are the only kind of guys they can conjure up for Adrian on short notice, because all of the bigger names, the more notoriable fighters, they're busy. They've got other stuff going on.
So he might have to go elsewhere for opportunities.
Otherwise, what could be his next stint of inactivity, well, that'll be his own fault, because in his own words, he's not under contract with anybody. Well, if you're not under contract with anybody and you're a free agent, get free and see what's out there. And finally, a story I didn't get to react to when it first broke because I wanted to give it more time to develop, to see if anything else would come out in opposition of it. MP Promotions chief Sean Gibbons says Pacquiao versus Crawford fight is nonsense. Gibbons said in a message to the Inquirer that the fight is another money-making scheme from top-ranked CEO Bob Arum and Pacquiao's former advisor, Michael Conks. Now, that's the first mention I've heard, Michael Conks, in a very long time, and it's very specific. He's his former advisor, not current. Quote-unquote, "This is Bob Arum and Mike Conks nonsense," said Gibbons Wednesday. "I do not believe that this is happening."
Well, that makes two of us.
Let me tell you something. I was never sold on that Crawford versus Pacquiao news. It was compelling, but I maintained a certain level of skepticism because things have been very immaterial with Manny Pacquiao as of late. I think that this Crawford fight will go the way that Ryan Garcia fight, that proposition. I think this is going to go the way that's going to go. That's nowhere.
Pretty much.
I don't really know why it is that Bob Arum has been proposing this for about 12 months, because he was doing this last year, talking about getting Manny Pacquiao and Crawford in the ring somewhere in the Middle East. This isn't new news per se. It's just the latest news. But then, like now, I maintain my original position. I don't think it's going to happen. Manny Pacquiao did let it be known earlier this year that he'd take the fight for $40 million. And if anybody's got $40 million to throw around, it's those guys over there in Abu Dhabi.
They do.
That's what makes the news compelling. Though ultimately, I don't think Manny Pacquiao went about his career the way that he did to get a Crawford fight. Manny crossed the street over to PBC Island, had a couple of fights there. His name became tacked on to both Conor McGregor and Mikey Garcia, and I still view Mikey Garcia as a more likely opponent choice for Manny, given everything that's happened, than Terrence Crawford. If Manny were interested in world titles and competing against the cream of the crop at 147 pounds, he wouldn't have sat out the whole of 2020 and let the WBA take his belt from him in 2021. That wasn't that long ago. If that's the kind of stuff that Manny had on his mind, he would have got out there against somebody, anybody, and defended that WBA title so that he could hang on to it.
He would have.
Before you tell me that the coronavirus stopped him from doing that, need I remind you Canelo Alvarez saw action in the last 12 months 2 times. Anthony Joshua did as well before 2020 was over against Kubrat Pulev.
Did you forget?
Those are 2 of the biggest names in boxing, the same as Manny Pacquiao. So it's not that Manny Pacquiao couldn't get out there and fight someone, it's that he didn't want to.
He could have fought.
The WBA went as far as labeling Manny Pacquiao a champion in recess. In recess. Well, he could end that recess at any given time, whenever the fuck he feels like it. He just didn't feel like it, given the circumstances. I mean, why didn't that Mikey Garcia fight come off yet? Even if things fizzled out with Conroy, Mikey's still out there. Mikey ain't got nothing going on. His dance card's free. Why not get out there against that guy? Look, that being said, I found that Crawford versus Pacquiao news no real news at all. I relegated that to one of those things that I've got to see to believe, and given how immaterial things have become for Manny Pacquiao, the Ryan Garcia situation, the fact that you've got both Sean Gibbons and Paradigm Management, two separate entities.
They're both issuing out statements on Manny's behalf.
Manny Pacquiao himself isn't confirming or denying anything that's being said. He didn't confirm or deny that he was in talks to fight Ryan Garcia, and here today, he's not confirming or denying that he's in talks to fight Terrence Crawford.
Sean Gibbons is.
Sean Gibbons is saying it's all nonsense, but then again, maybe Sean Gibbons isn't the guy to ask about Manny Pacquiao, because not that long ago, Paradigm Management issued out a statement, a warning to anyone acting on Manny Pacquiao's behalf, that they are solely in charge of what remains of the fighting senator's career. Them and no one else.
You think they said that shit for no reason?
Could they have been talking about Sean Gibbons? Sean Gibbons, who via his Instagram account was posting graphics of a potential Pacquiao versus Ryan Garcia fight. Was that statement for Sean? Or was it for Michael Conks, who Sean Gibbons just mentioned? He's calling this whole thing a money-making scheme, but I don't see how lying about a fight that isn't being negotiated, I don't see how that would qualify as a money-making scheme when you don't get to make any money off of this thing unless Manny's on board.
And you're saying he's not on board.
You're saying it's nonsense, though I don't even know if you're the guy to ask about what is or isn't nonsense when it comes to Manny Pacquiao. And this is what I mean. Things have become very immaterial with Manny Pacquiao as of late. There's this errant mystery as to who his next opponent is going to be.
And I don't know why.
I don't know why Bob Arum is throwing around the name of Manny Pacquiao in reference to a Crawford fight. I don't know why Sean Gibbons is denying Manny Pacquiao's involvement. I don't know why Manny Pacquiao doesn't just address this stuff himself. I don't know.
But I don't think this fight is going to happen.